Very good, take out a piece of paper.
Yeah, look.
So we're reading the rule of Saint Benedict and we're learning how monks live. And it's interesting, I hope. Enlightening, inspiring, whatever. Give me 3 rules that you noticed that you were interested in, that you remember, that you had something to say about. Write down 3 rules and 1 comment about the rule. Out of 31, you should remember 3. You don't have to remember the number of the rule. Just write down the rule and 1 sentence about what it means, what you think about it, if it's inspiring, if you think it's hard, just give me a comment on 3 different rules.
Do we have to remember the exact name of the rule?
No, you don't. No, just describe the rule that you're thinking of. How we doing? We're all set with Dr. Corso's class being timeline production.
Yeah.
Everyone's in on it. She has something to do. I have Marianne's paper for service.
I held mine too.
It's fine, do that. So, paper,
I'm gonna print it.
you need to print it. Type it and print it or?
Proofread it and then print it.
See. Okay, finish up. Girls, is it working for the Zoom class people when for the smaller quizzes and stuff, if I just send back a grade off the email that you sent me? Is that okay for everybody? I'm working on your report cards. I'm just not done yet. I'm working on it. But that way you kind of have an idea of where you are. I don't print those things. I print the papers and whatnot and spend a little more time, but on the quizzes, I just read them and give you a grade. Okay, so don't forget to send that to me, please. Thank you. We're to St. Columba and the Irish missionaries. So we've seen the destruction of the Roman Empire. We've seen the invasion of the barbarians, and yet somehow the Catholic Church has not died through all this. The Christians, what are we going to say? Their motto was love, and somehow they weren't defeated, and everybody else was. What do you guys think of that? So through this, now we've got the entire land invaded by barbarians. So okay, one part thwarted. Let's try something else. Now we're converting the barbarians, and it seems to have started with Clovis and the Frankish kingdom, and now we've got St. Augustine of Canterbury, and he specifically focused on England and the 7 different provinces there, and we kind of went back and forth between Christianity and paganism and Christianity and paganism. And now we've got reinforcements, and it's coming from an unusual place. I'm on page 200. I'm gonna move it, huh? 200 beat 11. 600. 154. Oh. We have seen that in their zeal for the spread of religion, hundreds of Irish monks left their native land in the 6th and 7th centuries. The first and greatest of these pilgrims, or voluntary exiles as they called themselves, was St. Columba, the apostle of Scotland. Of course, this is a man who changed history, so you might want to be taking some notes in case you might have to write something on St. Columba, the apostle of Scotland. Columba was born at Gartan in Donegal about the year 521. Both of his parents were of royal blood, his father being a member of the reigning family in Ireland and his mother a descendant of the kings of Leinster. In baptism, he received the name of Colum, Latin for Columba dove, but he was afterwards known as Columcille or Columba or the cell or church, no doubt in order to distinguish him from the others of the same name. An ancient legend says that the name was given to him by his playmates because he so often came from the little church in which he read his psalms to join in their games. He received his literary and religious training under 2 of the most distinguished Irishmen of his day, St. Finian of Moville and St. Finian of Clonard. Under these circumstances, it was only natural that he become a monk himself and a founder of monasteries. The famous monastery of Derry on the banks of Lough Foyle and numerous other churches and monasteries in various parts of the island revere him as their founder. So if you hear Columkill, in fact, we know a guy named Columkill. I don't know how parents could do that to a child, but Columkill, Columba, you never hear Colum, but you hear Columba and Columkill. Those were all referencing the same monk from Ireland. At the age of 42, Columba left Ireland in order to preach the word of God to the Picts of northern Britain, who were still pagans. An Irish missionary band of those days presented a singular appearance. As a rule, they traveled in companies of 12. They wore a coarse outer garment in color as it came from the fleece, and under this a white tunic of finer stuff. They were tonsured, bare on the front of the head, while the long hair behind flowed down on the back, and their eyelids were painted or stained black. Each had a long, stout kombucha or walking stick, and slung from the shoulder a leathern bottle for water and a wallet containing the greatest treasure, a book or two and some relics. Of St. Columba himself, his earliest biographer gives us the following portrait. He had the face of an angel. His disposition was excellent, his speech brilliant, his deeds holy, his counsel admirable. He could not pass the space of even a single hour without applying himself either to prayer or reading or writing or also to some manual labor. By day and by night, he was so occupied without any intermission in unwearied exercises of fasts and vigils that the burden of any of these labors might seem to be beyond human endurance. And amid all, he ever showed himself affable, smiling, and saintly. He carried the joy of the Holy Spirit in his inmost heart. True story. I was just talking yesterday to an old friend of mine and we got into the topic of, because I do a lot of weather talk. Oh, how's the weather? It's good here. How's the weather there? It's sunny. No, it's not the kind of talk I do. So almost immediately we got into this, and it wasn't a debate, this conversation about how to best help the church in today's world. And he was saying that a friend was pushing hard for the social reform and Catholic action and external. And absolutely, we have to have that. However, I did bring up that in 200 pages of church history thus far, with the possible exception of Constantine, who was not a Christian, with the possible exception of Constantine, who can you think of the people that we've said changed church history in the 200 pages? Name one who was not all about prayer and fasting and the divine office and the spiritual things. Like first. Clovis, also a convert. But name one.
You mean that wasn't Catholic?
No, what I'm saying is, if you want to change the church, pray. If you want to change men's hearts, pray. I'm not saying you don't then need to go out there. But this whole, social, it's not that we don't need it, but it's not going to work unless the person themselves who's going out to the society at large to do social action, right? To change things, to be active, to be socially active. You're not going to be effective unless you do all this first. You have to be exceptionally holy, or all it's going to do is feed your own ego. And you might do a little thing here and a little thing there, but actual substantial change only comes from extremely holy people, as evidenced in this book, and therefore in the history of the church. Can anybody refute that? It's not that we disagree, because you need both sides, but I'm saying if you don't have holy people, you can say, oh, we need to get out there and evangelize and all that. You can say that all you want, but it's ineffective.
Kind of.
Trump, also not Catholic. So isn't it interesting that God uses these these larger than life leader types to get things going, but they're backed by 1 million people praying.
Or his,
Like Constantine backed by the martyr's blood
or his wife was pregnant too.
and calling on Our Lady and Saint Michael and somebody giving him a scapular, for crying out loud. The spiritual is propelling. So this is why I'm telling you, every single one of you as one single person can change history. Seriously change history. But you're not going to be able to do it unless you first get yourself right with God and get holy and know your scriptures and frequent the sacraments and fast and all of that and mortify yourself. It's not going to work. But if you are able to do that, not only you're going to save your own soul, you're going to drag a whole bunch of people with you.
I have a kind of like a dumb question, but
That's not done.
everything has past that is called history. Say that I asked you some question and you answered me. If I didn't answer the question, there's no way you will answer me. Does that count as changing the history?
I mean, the whole time, space continuum, all that, blah, blah, blah. What I'm talking about is substantial change. We have pagans, barbarians, who just took over half the known world, destroyed Christianity, tore down the temples, scared the Christian people basically out of existence, right? How are you going to change that? Now the pagans are running the world, more or less. Either that stands or it doesn't stand. If it's not going to stand, it's going to take people to change hearts. How are you going to do that? Well, Columba is doing that by having a face of an angel, a disposition that is excellent, brilliant speech, holy deeds, and admirable counsel. He could not pass the space of even a single hour without applying himself to prayer or reading or writing or also some manual labor. By day and by night, he was so occupied without any intermission in unwearied exercises of fasts and vigils that the burden of these labors might have seemed beyond human endurance. This is exactly St. Benedict. This is exactly St. Basil. That's what I'm talking about. If you are a person like that, other people look at you and go, wow, maybe I could be like that. I'm inspired. And he does, and he just, let's hear what he does. The little island of High or Iona, Iona off the western coast of Scotland was placed at Columbus' disposal by the King of the Picts. And there he founded a monastery, which for centuries was one of the most famous in Western Europe. So ahead of approaching the King of the Picts in, where was it? North Britain,
Mhm.
Northern Britain. Ahead of approaching the King of the Picts, Picts, Columba was 42 years old and was steeped in godliness, holiness, personal uprightness. And then he goes to the King of the Picts and converts him. And then the king goes, hey, I've got a nice spot for your monastery. Here's this Isle of Iona. Guess what's going to happen from this little, do you know what Iona is? It's like a rock. In the, what sea? Is it just the Atlantic or is it on the other side? Where's the
Probably
Isle of Iona?
one of these.
I think it's tiny.
Well,
You
they have
know.
a bunch of, yeah.
Okay, now he's being given an island. Here, you can have this for your monastery. And the next part of the sentence, not even a new sentence, is monastery, which for centuries was one of the most famous in Western Europe. How? It was a typical early Irish monastic settlement, grouped about a number of small, unpretentious oratories of wood or dry piled stone were dozens of wickerwood huts, circular or rectangular in shape. The larger ones served as guest houses, workshops, kitchens, refectories, barns, etc. The smaller ones were the cells of the monks, each affording accommodations for 2 or more persons. Somewhat apart from the rest, near the main oratory, stood the cell of the abbot. It was also of wood, but being built on the eminence and raised from the ground on tree stumps, it made more show than its fellows and commanded a good view of the surroundings. The whole group of buildings was enclosed by a strong rampart of palisades or stone. You need to be protected. So it's just huts, and the bigger ones for the kitchens and the oratories, like the chapel, where they learned and prayed. And then huts, two beds to a hut. And one hut was up on stumps, so it was a little higher than the rest. That's it. No Wi-Fi on Iona, by the way. St. Columba left Ireland with only 12 companions, but the number of his disciples increased from day to day. Other monasteries or hermitages had been established on the neighboring islands and on the mainland. All these communities, together with those which the saint had founded in Ireland, formed a vast monastic confederation known as the Family of Columba. Now I'm backing up just a second, because we read that while he was in Ireland, the famous monastery of Derry on the banks of Lofoyle Lake, it's a lake, and numerous other churches and monasteries in various parts of the island revere him as their founder. So he started out by founding monasteries in Ireland, and then he went to found this monastery on an isle off the coast of Scotland because the Pict leader gave it to him, and suddenly they keep coming. More and more monks. Why and how? It doesn't make any sense. Oh yes, I want to squirrel myself away on an island that has nothing. To do what? Pray and fast and work. And suddenly we have a family of Columba. Monasteries full of men doing the divine office and praying and fasting and working. That's what they do all day, every day. In Ireland and now off the coast of Scotland. In order to overthrow, like the early Irish church, the church in Scotland was organized on a monastic basis. There were no dioceses ruled by bishops. Bishops performed all the episcopal functions such as ordination, confirmation, dedication of churches and altars, but they lived in monasteries subject to the supreme authority of the abbot of Iona, who, unlike many abbots in Ireland, never received episcopal consecration. So now we have off the coast on an island an abbot who is in charge of all of the running of the churches in Ireland and now Scotland too. It's coming from the monastery. In order to overthrow paganism in the land of the Picts, Columba resolved to attack it in its stronghold, the court of Brude, the Pictish king at Inverness. Has anyone ever heard of Inverness, Scotland? Look it up. The pictures are astounding. It's a beautiful medieval town. Gorgeous, gorgeous town. There seems to have been a severe trial of strength between the saint and the Druids, the sworn enemies of Christianity, by whom the king was surrounded. But in the end, by his eloquent preaching, the manifest holiness of his life, and by the performance of miracles, he converted Brude and many of his subjects. All over northern Scotland and the Isles there remains to this day traces of the little cells or oratories that were planted by the monks of Iona. Oh, I desperately need to go. Desperate. When Columba died on the 8th of June, 597, he was born in 521. Northern Scotland was a Christian country. The name of his apostle, says his biographer, was venerated not only through Ireland and Britain, but even as far as Spain, Gaul, and Italy, the city of Rome, the head of all cities. He's on the list, my friends. Don't you think he's cool? It's just shocking. It's so shocking. All he did was pray and fast. And then after years and years of that, he goes and preaches to a barbarian king and converts him and a lot of the people. And then Scotland was Catholic from here until the Protestant Reformation. Well, before that, The Brits kept trying to take it, and everyone knows William Wallace. And William the Bruce and all that, it was all Catholic stuff. And then the Protestants got a foothold in Scotland, and now Scotland is Protestant, not even a part of it. I mean, there's little bits and pieces of Catholicism in Scotland, but Scotland's not a Catholic place. At least Ireland, the northern part, tried to stay Catholic for a long time. They've abandoned it too. So my friends, pray and fast like for the next 20 years and then go reconvert these places. You know, bring them back. You want to, ask?
I want to
Yeah.
go to those places.
No, you gotta go convert them. Become an abbess and then go start a little convent and then start converting people. Yeah, and then they'll be reading about you in the history books. Does that sound good? Okay, tomorrow we'll take up Saint Columban. Columba the Younger. Okay. Take 2 minutes and we'll look at Don Quixote.
Thank you, Mrs. Loftus.
You're welcome.